Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Hey everybody, Coach Blu Robinson here. I want to give everyone a thanks for downloading, supporting, and giving us some feedback on these podcasts. I hope they're working for you. By the events leading up to Addict II Athletes podcast and the things that we do on social media, I want to give you an opportunity to jump online to our Addict II Athlete website and download any content that you might find relevant to your own recovery. Specifically, if you yourself are struggling with addictions, reach out to us. We'll be able to help navigate you, support, and give you help to help navigate through this world of addiction and addiction recovery. Athletes, if you find yourself in a situation by which you want to do more, we ask that you jump on our page and download and look at the content specifically about becoming a certified sober coach. Addict II Athlete provides 40 hours of personal training that will allow you to become a certified coach, open up chapters of Addict II Athlete throughout your community, and really the world in general. But really jump on there, check out our resources. We've got lots of stuff on there from our YouTube channel, our podcast here, and much, much more. So jump onto our website, check out all the content, and give us some feedback on what you need, and we look forward to helping you. Athletes, I look forward to today's podcast. I've got a gentleman who I've met through our good friend David Clark, and this was a situation that he started with us a couple of years ago, by which we wanted to start an international race team. And David and I put this together, and we put this out for folks all over the world. And I thought, really, David, all over the world? And he said, yeah, Blu, I know people all over the world. And this is how we met this gentleman. And I'm excited to talk to Carl Adams today, who is he's in England, and he jumped on our international race team and has since done some amazing things. And prior to that is an avid runner and a man who is creating and doing things in his own life that really helps not only establish people in recovery, but really get their mindsets in tune with becoming something greater than themselves. Carl, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Say hi to the team, and let's just jump into it by you explaining a little bit about who you are and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me on. Wow, that's something to think about. I suppose
it's a lot at once, huh?
Yeah. How did I end up talking to you via David Clark? Really, was, I suppose we could go back to the very beginning with my childhood. I was brought up by, so my family generations were they ran bars and pubs and what we call over here bookmakers, betting shops. Don't know what they're called in the States, but
I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Bet on the horses and gambling and stuff. In fact, my granddad was one of London's first legal bookmakers, and he was doing it for about 30 years before that. So, yeah, it was. You could say that the addiction was in my blood, and I was in a very unusual household growing up. In that, when I was 2 years old, my mother became a Jehovah's Witness. And my dad still carried on running pubs and bars and stuff. And so we had the family home, and I was literally dragged between the church, or what they call the Kingdom Hall, and the pub. And that went on for all of my childhood, literally living this double life of extremes. So there was, you've got to behave this way with the religion, and then anything goes in the pub. And and incredibly they stayed together as a couple. I mean, they met on the race course, so obviously before they were married, and it was incredible they stayed together for that long, considering the different paths they ended up taking. But I ended up choosing the pub at around 15, 16 years of age. And I'll never forget the first time I got drunk. That was when I was 13. And just the feeling of feeling like I was at home. You know, that feeling like I belonged and I was at ease. And fast forward 25 years, the only time I felt that exact feeling again was during the course of an ultra marathon. Obviously, there's a lot of story in between there, but that's really where.
But the bookends are the same, right? That feeling of like, this is different. This is something new. This is something big. This is something intense. Like, yeah. the stuff in the middle, that's great. But like, it makes perfect sense how that book ends, man. And like to be able to say, wow, this over here, this ultra, this feels better, but it still feels like that. Because what did it do for you on both accounts? What did both of those experiences do for you?
Well, that was it. It was kind of in reverse. So I like to think about the experience of running, whether it's just training day to day or the ultimate experience for me, which is an ultra run,
Mm-hmm.
as the opposite of drinking. So you get the pain of the moment, but ultimately afterwards, it's a deeper connection, some kind of, dare I say it, spiritual experience.
Yeah.
And when I was getting drunk and high later on in life, it was like that. That's kind of the false promise of the buzz that you get from alcohol
Mm-hmm.
and drugs.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
you might experience that euphoria for a couple of hours, but then pay for it for the rest of the week or even longer. Whereas for me, like running is the opposite of that now.
Absolutely. Well, so I guess my question for you then, brother, is what was it then that kind of made you feel like, you know what, I'm going to be done with all this, and to this extreme of drinking and just being a goof, to like saying, what is this registration for this ultra run? Like, tell me a little bit about that jump, because your friends, your family, they must be thinking you're insane. Like, what are you doing? Like, you don't run that far. Like, what was that? What was that leap like? Tell me about that experience.
But that stems really from. So I went to live with my dad and left the religion behind. And actually, when you do that, I don't know how much you know about that particular faith, but because I was baptized very young as a Jehovah's Witness, so I was 15, 16.
Yeah.
When I left that faith, as it were, like my whole family on my mother's side was supposed to disown me. It's called disfellowshipping.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So to this day, there are my cousins, my aunties and uncles, and I haven't seen. I'm 45 in August, and I haven't seen them since I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And the same's supposed to happen with my mother and my sister, but things have kind of eased on that since I had children. But so it was quite a hard choice to make when I was that young. It was either, because I had those two extremes, literally so my mother converted when I was 2. So from the age of 2 to 16, 18, I was like literally pulled between the two.
Wow.
To a point sometimes when I was taken out of the house because my mum didn't want my dad to know where I was going, and I was going to the Kingdom Hall to worship. And so I was pretending I was going somewhere and then getting changed halfway into my smart clothes so I could go into the Kingdom Hall. Mm-hmm. And the opposite used to happen with my dad. He used to pretend that I was going to see my Jehovah's Witness friends or whatever, and I wasn't really. I was going to the pub to get drunk.
Yeah.
So this was like 15, 16. So those having been brought up like that, it's just normal. I thought it was normal. Like always say, when Mowgli was raised by wolves, he thought he was a wolf. So it doesn't kind of, telling the story now, people are like, that is a crazy childhood. But to me at the time, it was just a normal thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I chose the pub, and I ended up very early on, 18, 19, 20, going into the pub trade myself. So I left my dad's business behind and I went into it myself, and I was quite good at getting people to spend money behind the bar, So I ended up running pubs and running bars for most of my 20s. And it was when I was 24 that a young potential waitress, came in for a job interview. I'll never forget it. I was hungover to hell. And she came in for an interview with my boss at the time. And I thought, wow, she's a pretty woman. And 22 years later, we're married with 3 children. But there's a lot.
Brilliant.
A lot that's gone on since then, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But I can honestly say that she's Why she stuck around, I don't know, but
I'm rowing that same boat. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. It's those companions, those gals that really do kind of figure us out and get us on a different track, man. Mine did the same thing. I think you've been talking and corresponding with Marissa. It really, if it wasn't for her to say, "Hey, there's something better inside there. How about you knock it off and explore that?" I would
yeah,
probably still be in the dumps, man. So I get that immensely. So it sounds like, Carl, there's a lot of extremes, like a lot of extremes in your life, especially growing up. And your story is very close and similar to so many out here, even in the state of Utah, because of the religious tendencies that go on. And sometimes we
right,
get a lot harder on ourselves with that than we have to be. And it's interesting because, yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses are here too. But the LDS, the Mormon population, the Church of Latter-day Saints, sometimes has that same kind of feeling and stigma with kids that don't quite understand how to navigate themselves in a world where they can choose and be okay to do so, but then feel like, man, there's pressure and there's outside expectations and there's rules that maybe I don't quite understand or get or want to even adhere to. And so, man, you speak language that's going to be very much the same here. And so, yeah, I get that. I understand it. And so when you started coming out of it, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I still have, I respect people of faith, and
Mm-hmm.
in many ways, growing up, I still kind of looked that way, but it wasn't particularly, I wasn't looking for that religion or a religion, but I, I suppose in recovery, you would call it a higher power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was looking for that everywhere, but I didn't want it to be the Jehovah's Witness faith. I don't want to put that religion down or anything, but
No, yeah.
I knew it wasn't that. I knew it wasn't that one, but I knew I was looking for some kind of spiritual connection. And eventually, in my 40s, I found that through ultra running.
See, and
Where
I love that, man, because I feel the same way. I'm a very active Latter-day Saint out here, and I've held positions of I don't want to say authority, but I've held positions. I'm a bishop, and so I've helped lots of people and stuff in their religious pursuits. But religion and spirituality are two very, very different things, and I think we bugger that up quite a bit. We forget. But I'm a firm believer, probably like you are, that there is God at every mountaintop. And so as you're climbing up there and you get to that spot, and as you could hear your blood pumping, your heart beating through your ears, and it's just that silence is deafening. That's where I think God is. That I felt that this weekend at the Squaw Peak 50 when we were climbing up, and I'm watching my kids carry these big, huge backpacks full of supplies for the ultra runners, and I'm just in tears, crying because I'm like, they shouldn't be here. This is an extremely difficult hike, and they're just like powering up there. And then when the runners come down, they're serving them this food and the stuff that they like labored to get up there. And I'm in tears half the time, man, because I'm like, this is service. This is
yeah,
spirituality. It messes you up to see like the inconsistencies in our parents' lives, because mine never quite gave me that ability to serve, or to like do these kind of things. And here now I'm seeing these things come with my kids, and I'm like, it's weird how these inconsistencies in our lives can be completely eradicated by us just doing something different, something that you're doing. Your kids, what do they think when they see you like out here running and doing this stuff? And they're like, can you imagine how different it is from where you grew up? I mean, isn't that wild how this all kind of falls into place?
yeah. I mean, that's the main driver for me now. So just going back to the pub day. So I was we ended up getting together. I ended up getting together with that waitress, Sean, my wife, who's downstairs now with our 3 kids, and we lived together, and it was okay. I could quite easily save money at the time because I was working all the time, and she was studying for a degree to become a teacher, and 2 years before we actually went, I decided to say, well, I said to Sean, look, let's go traveling. I don't know what I want to do, but I was kind of envious of her doing this degree, and I was in my mid-20s and thought I'd left it too late to study for any kind of further education. And we ended up going in 2004. We bought a round the world ticket. She finished her degree, and I decided to leave the pub trade. And I'd been in it 10 years by that time.
Wow.
We bought this round the world ticket. This I'm a heavy drinker now. At this point, 28 years of age, at that time, I'd lost a bit of weight by then because, in my mid-20s, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now. So I was 200 pounds, and for someone who's 5'7", that's a lot of weight to carry. I'm a short guy, and I knew I had a problem from all the way through. Like even that first time, I thought that feels too good.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to quit drinking. I was in my mid 23, 24, and in my wisdom, I decided to replace that with truckloads of ecstasy, and just thought that was,
Yeah. You thought, hey, that's a great filler, right? Fill the void with that instead. Gotcha.
So, and incredibly, I managed to keep my job and keep going. And when I say truckload, I mean a truckload, up to 10 pills a night. Sometimes.
Wow.
And all this time, Shana stayed with me. She stayed by my side. And when we went traveling, we ended up in places we didn't expect to end up in. And when we got to Africa, and we went to South Africa and Namibia, and we got to Botswana and Zimbabwe, that's when I started noticing these runners, the African runners,
Mm-hmm.
the best in the world, obviously. I just thought, wow, in another life, maybe I'll be able to run. And I just parked that at the back of my mind. All the time, I'm still heavily drinking around as we're doing this trip around the world. But as you've probably experienced, that not all of it is bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about recovery, and we're all, we talk about how bad addiction is and how bad the path that it leads us onto is, but 80% of my time in my 20s and getting drunk and high, it was good. I really enjoyed it, and I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to say sometimes, but I think it's the honest thing to say. But it's the 20% of the time where it goes wrong that's led me to where I am now, because I'd be in the gutter or worse.
What do you think was the void you were trying to kind of fill with the ecstasy and stuff? Like, what do you think you were trying to kind of fill the gap with? Because that's an interesting crossover. Depressant, with the alcohol, to really kind of that emotional stimulant with the ecstasy. What were you searching for that you didn't think you could kind of gain on your own with that? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that childhood where I was brought up. The side of it where there's no denying that that way of life, when you've got a faith and being around people who truly believe, to the point where they'll do incredible things for their faith, that there's got to be something. But that particular faith wasn't for me. So when I decided to leave that faith, I was looking for an answer. What is that? What is that? What is that thing? I don't know what it is. I just can't put my finger on it. So I'll try and find it in certain ways. And if it wasn't the alcohol, I try it another way. And for 18 months, 2 years, I tried it through ecstasy. And sometimes I think on the face got there, but I didn't.
That makes sense. And so there you were, though, in South Africa on this world trip of experience, and you're thinking, wow, am I supposed to even be out here seeing all this stuff and doing this stuff? I'm supposed to be stuck home doing this little deal. Your eyes kind of got open to that culture, that those runners and that stuff. And so that where the seed was planted on, maybe I could do something like this. Like, is that really what inspired you to go home and put some running shoes on?
The seed was planted there, but it was many years until I acted on that. But actually, the day that kind of led to where I am now was the day that I crossed the border from Botswana into Zimbabwe. Because those countries are neighbours. And when we were in Botswana, the country was kind of, you'd look around and there were people in suits, there were supermarkets, and it's a nice place to be. Of course, Botswana's got its problems, but on the same day, I was in Botswana in the morning, and we crossed the border into Zimbabwe in the afternoon, and it was like crossing into hell on earth. Now, this is 2005 at the height of Mugabe's atrocities, and I just thought, this is the same soil. So Botswana's there, and Zimbabwe is here. And what has gone wrong here? And I'd always paid an interest in politics, but not party politics, but more in like international relations. And I liked, the very early part of the trip was we spent some time in Boston, and I was reading a lot about JFK and his legacy, what led him into politics and stuff. And so while I was in Botswana and Zimbabwe, I put in a really cheeky application to the University of Kent. I said to you earlier that I was kind of jealous of my wife. Not jealous, but I admired that she'd been through this university degree. And I just put in a really cheeky application to the University of Kent, where I live now, to study international relations and, the war and peace side of it, conflict resolution. And they asked me to come in for an interview, and by the time I got the email and opened it, I just said that I can't come for an interview because I'm in Uganda. I was in Uganda at the time. And so we had the interview on the phone, and kind of long story short, I kind of talked my way into this degree. No, I had no right to get in there, but I talked my way into it. And we returned from traveling. It was supposed to be a year's trip, and it ended up being 18 months because we loved Africa so much. Returned in the August, and I started this degree in international relations at the age of 30 when we got back in September. And I just loved every moment of that. I didn't know where it was going, but I finished my degree, and at the end of it, I got offered a scholarship to carry on and do a master's in community development. Actually, federalism was the thing that I kind of focused on.
Wow.
Obviously, as an American, you'll be very familiar with federalism.
Yeah.
But comparative federalism, but really about what happens at the community level and how power is dispersed. But it starts with the family, then the village, and then the municipality. And it went back to this 16th century idea of 17th century idea of how power is dispersed. And so I finished that, and the day I finished that and handed in my dissertation, I saw this job that was about community development in Kent, where I lived. And I'd just been writing for a whole year about community development, how community organising, and I think Barack Obama's story had come out then about what he did in Chicago and stuff.
Right.
How that led him eventually to the presidency. So it was something I was really excited about, and I took about working with potential social enterprises in rural communities and trying to save in villages out over here in England at the time. They were like, ironically, this is what I was asked to work on. There were about 40 pubs a week closing in rural communities and around the country, and I was asked to try and save some of those, as not just pubs but shops as well, in communities, by getting community together to run it as what we call a social enterprise, where people would invest shares in their pub or in their shop, and they would kind of look after it as a community and have volunteers. So it's a business, but it has a social goal as well as a commercial goal. It might not be a viable commercial business, but it's certainly a hub of the community.
Makes sense.
So I went into that, and I really loved that, and from there, at the time I'm still drinking, but I've reduced my drinking because I've had a child, my first child, Scarlett, downstairs now, and this is probably the most dangerous point of my addiction, because I knew all the way through my 20s that I had a problem, to a point where I quit drinking and took up ecstasy. And obviously, that's the wrong choice to make, but I gave up ecstasy, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll pick up a drink again. And I fooled myself. This would be a familiar story to you. I fooled myself that I had a lid on it. I wasn't drinking like I was drinking before. When I was running the pubs, I would start with a small half of beer, 10, 11 a.m. and drink just small beers all the way through. If you added it up, it was like 12, 13 pints a day or something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
Yeah, at the height, that's at the peak.
Yeah.
That's when I'm at like the 14th.
Mind blowing. Yeah, makes sense.
And so to be in this like nice job, I've got my degree, I've got my master's degree, I've got a child, my wife, we live in the countryside, everything's fine. You can have a few beers at a weekend, you can have a few treats.
Yeah, you deserve it. You earned it. It's okay. It's all right. At least you're not like you were. Absolutely. It makes every person in your situation has gone down that same exact path. And so it makes sense to try and validate and justify. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like in Utah, but there's a level of drinking in the UK that is quite acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was drinking probably to that level in front of people, and then going home and topping up, and kind of hiding the extra bits. No one's going to see me between now and bedtime.
Yeah.
But that in hindsight, that acceptable level of drinking in the UK, which we're still talking about the acceptable level now,
right?
Is nothing short of respectable addiction. And that's the life I was living. And I think I'm so lucky to have come out of that, because you could compare the level of drinking and drug taking before to having the chainsaw out. I'm really hurting myself.
Yeah.
Metaphorically cutting limbs off, and everyone can see that I'm a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the chainsaw away. People don't like to see the chainsaw because it's too much. I don't want to see all that gore.
Yeah.
But I pulled out this is what Russell Brand refers to in his book Recovery. Pulled out the cheese grater.
Yep.
So if you've got a cheese grater, you're just grating a bit off.
Taking it off. Mm-hmm.
Taking a little bit off hurting myself just enough so it hurts me, but no one else can see it. So that the chainsaw was away, the cheese grater was out, and I'm just hurting myself. I can cover that. I can cover that up. I can cover that up. And I just kept going like that until one day I was pulled over by the police after drinking, and I ended up in a police cell, and it's something I'm completely ashamed of. And shame can't survive the light, though. That's the thing.
I love it.
But I'll tell that story now to anyone who wants to listen, because if I can save one life through people not getting in a car after having a drink, then it's worth it.
Are the rules, and I would assume that the stigma and everything is relatively the same over there in England as it is here, with the down view of drinking and driving, DUI? Does it come with the harsh punishments and the stigma that it does over here as well, which is, 3 strikes, you're out, your license is gone? I mean, what is it just as intense over there as it is here with that?
Oh, no. Did you say 3 strikes?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll say, all right, first time you need to go get treatment. Second time, okay, now you got jail time. Third time, pulling your license. And so what's and I say that 3 times they pull your license, but trust me, there's been people that have been pulled over 1,000,001,001 times and still have their licenses until they kill someone. But what is the view of that, like, pretty harsh over there as well?
It's viewed as there's not much worse than a drink driver, and quite rightly. I've been one. I'm no longer one, but
right.
It is viewed as there's not much worse you can do in the UK in terms of.
Which is interesting because, like you say, I mean, there are pubs, there are places to do this all over the place. I mean, in Utah, we are fairly lucky, Carl, because it's interesting because of the religion, because of the Latter-day Saint Church and whatnot here, and people look at this as there's a lot of suppression and stuff. But it's a lot harder to get alcohol here than it is in most states in the country, because we have state liquor stores and there's only about 1 to every city. And, and to get a license to serve alcohol is almost impossible. And they only give out so many. And so to a certain degree, for someone in recovery, they're very lucky to live here because it's not in your face. It's not as you walk into the grocery store, sitting right there in the front of the store. And so to us, it's kind of like, well, this is good. But for the people that are like, hell bent on wanting to get drunk and get high, it's a little bit more difficult. But for someone in recovery, it's fantastic because it takes a little effort. But everywhere else in the union here, it flows like water. I mean, so here that stigma is much higher if you were to get pulled over or whatnot, and there's a lot of stigma to it. But I hear what you're saying about like, yeah, that's a moment that I never want to do again. And I love your quote. I just wrote that down. I think that about the light and what happens when the light kind of gets turned on to that dark.
Actually, I'll tell you where that quote came from in a minute because it's not mine. But
yeah, please.
But, that stigma you spoke about there, that's entirely justified, and yeah. I knew it. And the biggest tap on the shoulder. I mean, you talk about spirituality or being in the right place or being looked after. I know whatever the higher power is, that night I was being looked after. The night I was pulled over for drink driving, because you will not believe what happened. I was driving from a pub home, and I wasn't just a little bit over the limit. I was. The irony was that I drove to this pub so I didn't have to drive home, so I could catch the last train home, walk back from the train station. And when I came out of the pub, the train pulled away. And so I thought, how am I going to get home? And so I thought, I'm going to chance this. I'm going to try and I'm going to drive home. It's midnight, 1 a.m, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's from the pub that I'm talking about to where I live. We're talking about a 10-mile drive maybe. And I get pulled over about 5 miles into the drive. And I've seen the police come behind me, and they've pulled me into this building, into this complex. And it happened to be the place where my father lives. And he lives in this residential, it's not a home for older, well, it is. Mm-hmm. It's not, it's kind of, what do they call it? It's not a care home. It's not like you need to looking after 24/7, but there's extra support. That's it, supported housing. Yeah. So yeah, my dad is an alcoholic, mm-hmm. and he's lucky to be alive. He's 70, but he's 71 maybe, but with the body of a 90-year-old. Right. And I'm being arrested. The cuffs are being put on my hand underneath my father's window.
Oh, no kidding.
This is it. This is the truth. And obviously he didn't see. This is like 1 a.m. I'm looking up and I'm thinking, there's my dad up there, alcoholic father. And that's where I'm going, if I don't. And I ended up actually thanking that moment. I turned around and I thanked the police officers because I knew that was the turning point. But I was very drunk, obviously, and they saved what it's not that I don't care about my life, but I could have killed other people and myself. So,
the analogy, brother. I mean, getting pulled over into that assisted living complex, and then like looking at your dad's window and thinking, I'm so close, but I'm so far from him, and I don't want that for me. I don't want in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, my sons to be doing the same thing. I mean, holy crud. I mean, God did. He put you right there to teach you a deeper lesson and a deeper understanding of what you were doing. I mean, you can't, Carl, you can't write this stuff, man. This doesn't just, that's not on accident. That's no coincidence. That's divine, man. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. You give me cold chills, brother. I'm just like, I'm sitting there thinking about you, just feeling that way and just staring up at that window thinking, and of course, he's not going to come look down. I mean, first of all, it's wee in the morning, right? But second of all, it's like he's probably dealing with his own stuff, and he was none the wiser, didn't see the lights or anything. So it's like, not on my watch. I'm not doing this for my family. I'm not doing this to me anymore. Man, I mean, you could write a book on that experience alone. Continue, please.
The following day, so obviously I'm put in a police cell. I didn't put up a fight. Obviously, I was like, you probably just saved my life and other people's lives. And where can I get help? I was asking them, where can I get help? I must need help. Mm-hmm. I've known since I was 13 that I've got this problem. And they gave me a number, but I actually woke up the following day. They can't let you go until you're sober. So, like, at least like, a bit more sober, or a lot more sober. So the following day, when I woke up in a police cell, it's Valentine's Day, and my daughter's third birthday. So I can't see my daughter on her birthday. I've just had this massive tap on the shoulder from wherever, being arrested outside my dad's window. And like, if you can't stop this now, then where's it going? Like, where have you got to be put to know that this has got to end? Mm-hmm. And so I decided to stop drinking then, but it took me, and to completely stop, it took me another 2 years. Mm-hmm. I kept trying. I did 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, but I'm missing out the major part of that story, actually. So when I get back to the police station and I've been arrested, and you get a phone call. So I phoned my wife. She picked up the phone. I said, I've been arrested. I've been arrested for drink driving. And I don't know how many wives would respond like this, but I can't imagine there's many. She said to me, everything is going to be all right. She put the phone down. And I was, what? How can I lose that? Yeah. How can I end up like my dad? How can my children see me going through what I saw him go through? You've got to stop this. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, rare, because that's not what you were expecting, was it? What were you expecting her to say to you, Carl?
Yeah, in hindsight, I couldn't expect anything less of her, because let's just do. Bear in mind, she's been with me all the way through this story I've just mentioned to you. And she's a very beautiful woman, and I was carrying a lot of weight, and I was like, why would you be with this man?
Was it hard for you to wrap your head around the fact that she loved you and that she loves you? I mean, because it sounds like to me, as a kid growing up, a lot like myself, brother, that word love made no sense to me, because it was so bizarre, because the actions that followed that word with my own parents, as you know, my mother was married and divorced 7 times. Whenever someone said that to me, I'm like, love means that you're leaving us for another 2 weeks to go off on some hiatus, and dad was never even in the picture. So when I first felt like, oh my gosh, this person really does care, and it's what I think love is, I was like, I don't want to do anything to screw that up. So, I mean, how hard was it for you to wrap your head around the fact that she loves you? I mean, mind blowing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it goes back to, I don't want to get too kind of psychological about it, but
it's fine. Go ahead.
In your childhood, those early years when your brain's being formed, and I didn't know really what love was. I didn't know. I was just confused all the time. My dad would come home, and he would never be physically violent, but he would be violent and regularly smash the house up. Every plate, every glass, as much furniture as he could break, it would go. And so even to this day, if I hear a glass break, I've got this. So when you talk about love, it wasn't a loving household to grow up in. So I didn't, when you asked me that question, do you think it might be love? Yeah, it's probably the only time that I felt that kind of that love is from my wife. You know? So
Powerful. So when she literally said it's going to be okay, you believed it. You're like, I don't deserve it, but I believe it.
well, I knew then. It just I had so many wake up calls, but that one was like some kind of biblical intervention or whatever. You know? And if you get tapped on the shoulder that hard and you don't turn around, then
there's no end to it then. Yeah.
no hope. But I carried on. I did drink again. I've actually only been completely sober of drugs and alcohol since the 26th of August 2018.
Wow.
So that's coming up for 2 years nearly.
I love it, man. I love it.
Okay,
Well, so teach me about this crossover then, because that was the beginning. So what put you into that new lifestyle? What put you into those running shoes and ultra, man? I'm telling you, like, brother, that's fast to become an ultra runner, because you start off slow. I mean, much like your pub, right? You start off slow, and then by the end of the day, you're there. But you went a little faster to that. Tell me about that experience, because we talk about it on Addict Athlete as erasing and replacing. How did it get to you? How did it work for you?
Yeah, well, that's an easy story, because you said there's 3 strikes and you lose your license. Here, you lose your license straight away. Mm-hmm. So I had my license taken away from me, and in court, and actually the judge gave me some credit because of that. Apparently, the policeman put in the statement that I thanked them, and I was ready to change, and this was the wake-up call that I needed, and so I still got a 2-year ban because I was that far over the limit, and I lived and I still live in the countryside. So the nearest town from where I live is 9 miles. Mm-hmm. So you need a car. You need a car where I live, and I liked running. I was doing the odd 5K, just really to try and keep the weight down a little bit so I could drink more beer. And I felt good after it. And this actually is how I ended up talking to David Clark, is because that week when I got back, I can't get anywhere. I mean, I'm literally I can't.
Stuck. Yeah, stuck. Mm-hmm.
So the nearest train station is 3 miles, and thought I'd just drop to the train station and get the trains to where I need to be. And as you would expect from the caliber of the woman I've just described, she was giving me lips where I needed to go to, and the people I was working for at the time, I was honest about that, and my boss stuck by me. Great man who I greatly admire, and I just started thinking, right, I really enjoyed the running to the train station, and I just started getting trains back to the train station where I live, and then I'd get a run home, and I started getting off sometimes a stop before. So instead of having to run 3 miles back, I'd have to run 7 miles back, and then the train stations got further and further away. And I just developed this love of running, and then I typed into Google alcoholic runner recovery, and up popped a book by Mishka Shubaly.
Yes.
Called The Long Run. Mm-hmm. And I read The Long Run. It's a short book. It's a Kindle single, and that chimed with me all the way through. And I thought, what a man! I need to find out more about him. And so I put some more. I put his name in, and then up popped the Rich Roll podcast.
Yeah. And
I listened to a few of Mishka's podcasts on there with Rich Roll, and then I read Rich Roll's book, Finding Ultra, which is about when he got, you know his story, no doubt.
Yep.
And which includes 2 or 3 DUIs, and a court case where he was tapped on the shoulder, he'd being looked after too. And that wake up call before his 40th birthday I'm thinking, this is what happened to me. I need to take notice of this. And so, because I enjoyed running, I just thought, well, I'll enter it. I didn't do a half marathon. I entered a marathon, and I did that. And then the same switch, that you talk about erase and replace. The same switch. I was in pain. I was in so much pain at the end of the marathon. But there's something in me. I could do it. Could I carry on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I get to that lamppost? Just wanting to go further. And people talk about addiction replacement, and I say, bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even close. And that's the thing, right? It hurt, but it didn't hurt as bad as those handcuffs getting put on your wrist as you're staring up at your father's window at 1:30 in the morning. That hurt. That pain that you experienced, mile 20, 21, 22, 23, that's easy to deal with. I mean, that's why I think we in recovery make such amazing athletes and such amazing ultra athletes, is because we know how to cope with pain. The physical pain, that's nothing. We've carried loads of emotional pain. And I love the fact that really what you were doing, unbeknownst to you, that I found with Addict II Athlete, is as you're running, the dopamine, everything starts to dump, and you're starting to feel better. And it's like, that's that depression kind of like a eliminator. It's like you used to drink to cope with it, but now you're running and coping with it. And it's like they both achieve the same thing, but one has a better flipping after effect than the other. And so you were beginning to really feel it. What was the first marathon you ran? Where was it?
It was a local one. It was a small marathon. It's called it starts from a village called Charing. It's countryside, 2 loops of a half marathon, and it's not flat. It's quite hilly. But my first marathon, I got it in 3:47, which wasn't too bad.
No, not at all. That's great for a first marathon. Holy cow.
Yeah, so I really only started running properly in March 2016. And I signed up for an ultra as soon as I finished the marathon, and it was called Race to the King. Which you finish on the steps of Winchester Cathedral, which is the burial place of the first kings of England.
Wow.
Statue of Albert the Great. You have to touch Albert the Great's foot.
See, I'm here. I'm inviting you to come out here. Maybe I better go out and see you and try that. That would sound amazing. Holy cow.
Race to the King is fantastic ultra. During the course of that race, I experienced for the first time that feeling of complete and utter connection. But it was it was like that first drink when I was 13, but there was no, you know as well as I do, when you line up for a marathon, half marathon, everyone's ego, but myself included, it's about time. And to get a good time, everything's got to be right. And you could train so hard for this, and no one can look you in the eye because it's so tense. But you toe the line of an ultra marathon, everyone's hugging. Well, hopefully we get to hug again soon. But there's no ego there, and any ego you do take into an ultra marathon is stripped away from you at mile whatever. It might be mile 80, it could be mile 20, but at one point it'll be completely taken away, and there'll be no difference between you and the ground you're running on, to a point where you're just that complete peace. It might only last 20 seconds, it might last 5 minutes, it might last 5 hours, but that's what I've been chasing ever since.
It's funny you say that, because this last weekend when we were up there doing this aid station, I told you how difficult our Windy Pass aid station is. For the runners to get there, it's even more extreme, because John Bozon, the race director, threw this beyond category climb because he needed to connect the lower trail to the upper trail to finish in 50. And people, he warns you wholeheartedly before you reach it that it's going to hurt. And everyone thinks in their head, well, how bad could it really be? And then they hit it. And our aid station is right after that. And it was interesting, because everyone that comes down into this, they are super humble because they just got their butts kicked on Bozon Hill. This one runner comes piling in, and you're right. He's got this attitude, and he's like, where's this and where's that? And I need some Coke, and I need some Pepsi, I need some kind of, I need some kind of cola. And we're like, we don't have any of that. And he's like, what's an aid station without that kind of stuff? I said, we had to pack all this stuff up here on our backs. I said, a couple liters of that stuff, you're putting on an extra, 5-6 pounds. He's like, yeah. You had to carry this stuff up here? I'm like, would you think it was beamed up here or helicoptered in? And he immediately changed. You could see the humility kind of kick in of like, wow, they carried all this stuff up. I think I can be okay for the next 5 miles downhill to not get a Coke. And it was funny because you're right. Everyone else, that was the only one that kind of come in with a rough attitude, but left kind of humble. And it was mile 40 for him. But for everybody else, you're right. You leave it out there. And if you start with a chip on your shoulder, either it'll end you and you won't be able to finish that race, or you'll leave it on the trail, which I love to counsel with my athletes of like, you know what, leave it out there. And it'll be on the trail if you want to go pick it up later, but no one wants to double back to go pick up their baggage, right? I love that analogy, Carl. I love it.
I listened to your podcast a couple of, was it with Zach? I think it was called Lead Trail.
Yeah.
And yeah, that chimed with me.
It did, didn't it?
The thing about that feeling is that it's like hitting Control Alt Delete for your soul, because as much as it hurts then, but that moment where nothing hurts and there's no difference between you and what's around you in the earth. That whatever happens there stays with you for, I think, for me anyway, it's probably about 2 weeks after.
Right.
And that's why I talk about it being like running ultras is like drinking in reverse, because you've got the initial suffering and then the bliss. For 2 weeks after, my mind is just my body could be completely broken, and it is, of course, if you do 100 miles, how can it not be? But my mind is just so sharp. I know exactly where I'm going, what is needed to be done, and just complete peace.
And the contrast to where you once were at the pubs doing this and now, and just what you've gained and what you've dealt with and what you've worked through and what you've experienced on those trails and in that situation, being governed by your own legs, fueling yourself with your own heart. I mean, that's people that wake up to Addict II Athlete, and they come in, the first thing they say is, well, I want to do this, but I'm not a runner. We kind of laugh at, because it's like, well, none of us were, but we all were born that way, right? I mean, you read the book, Born to Run. We were all born that way. And so it's like we forget about how important it is and what it does for us. I think there's something just like you said, like primal, that gets us down to being able to accomplish this. When we got to the top of that hill, I was with my kids and I was blown away, Carl, because this trail is hard. I tried to talk them out of it. I'm like, you guys, you don't want to do this. This is nuts, And they're like, no, we're going to do it. And I'm sitting there and I'm bawling because I'm thinking they have, an extra 50 pounds on their backs and their little legs are trying to get them up this hill. And I'm thinking, if I would have taken that experience away from them, they would have never have understood the hard things that they can do. And that I would have kind of like downplayed their ability. And I'm thinking, how many times do we do that to ourselves? We're like, well, I can't, I'm not a runner. I can't do this, and I'm thinking, man, we haven't even tapped into what we're potentially able to do because we psych ourselves out too soon. We cash in our chips before we can even play the game.
Yeah. And
it's wild.
After the Race to the King, which is a double marathon, so it's 53 miles.
Nice.
On there. And I finished that, and again, could I go further? So I was reading about 100 milers, Dean Karnazes' story, thought, well, let's try 100. So I did 100 miler, and I did that in under 20. I did it 23 hours, 30 something minutes the first time I did 100, and then I can't remember where I heard it. It was probably on one of Rich Roll's podcasts, but I think it was along the lines of you're not an ultra runner until you've got a DNF under your belt.
I like that.
So I didn't want to enter a race and get a DNF, but I entered this race called the Race Across Scotland, which is 215 miles.
Oh my gosh!
Entered that in 2018, and it broke me. It completely broke me at mile 100, and didn't, nothing. I was gone. But I was still. This is when I was still drinking, but the cheese grater drinking.
Yeah.
And my family actually flew from a holiday that we were on in France and just up to Scotland, which is quite a short flight. The plan was to get this race done in 4 days and then fly back, but I didn't make it. 2 days later, I DNF'd, and I flew back to my family holiday, and that week was my last ever drink, because I sat there for the next 2 days watching people getting a lot further than I got.
Yeah.
Finishing. That was a really high dropout rate, but they were finishing. And 2 days later, they're finishing. I'm sat there with a beer, and I'm thinking, hang on.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. So that was the 26th of August that I decided to. I remember having a beer in my hand. It was 10 p.m. and I was like, "That's it. I'm done. I need to get across that. I need to get across Scotland." And so, last year I re-entered the race 2019, and I got across 215 miles across. I think there was like 80 starters. 80 people started it, and 29 of us finished.
Good grief.
And made some amazing friends. But I tell you what, there's a story there too, because I was 3 miles into this race, and my knee went. My left knee went, and I'm pulled over on, I'm hobbling, and I'm thinking, I've hyped this up so much. I've stayed sober for a year to get this done. I'm 3 miles into it, and I've got to pull out. You're joking. Yeah. And this guy, giant of a man, Phil Mills, hopefully he'll listen to this. He came over and said, "You all right, mate? You okay?" I'm like, "I'm not really. My knee really hurts. I've really hurt it." And he said, "This is typical. This is what I love about the ultra running community, because any other motivation,
yeah, they'd leave you behind." Mm-hmm.
He said, "Don't worry, I've got a broken foot." So he broke his foot the week before in training, but he's still there. And so for the next 212 miles, we ran these carrying these injuries. We got.
Oh my gosh.
We went to some places that, physically and mentally, that you wouldn't believe. Dean kind of asked about hallucinations, out of body experiences, and that's had all of it. And it was just like the adventure of a lifetime. But I was supported by my wife. She was for the first time ever, she was my crew. So at every aid station, obviously not through the night because of the children, but she was there when she could be there with the 3 kids. And there's no way, like the rest of my life, I wouldn't have got through it without her there. And just crossing that finish line with my kids there, just 215 miles per hour, 30,000 feet of elevation. So that beats.
Oh gosh, dude, that's insane. Yeah. It's like climbing Everest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 4 days, but it was.
Good grief.
It's something. Actually, I've got a little thing here my wife made. I don't know if you can see that. But
yeah.
Time and stuff. But
that is awesome.
But the point is, that was when I knew that sobriety kicked in then, because I looked at them and just their face, they were just unbelievably proud, and I thought this could have gone another way. I could have. They're gonna grow up and not see their dad as a drinker. Never. Scarlett, my eldest, would have perhaps remember me having a beer or two or whatever, but the small ones, 7-year-old and 4-year-old, they're just going to know me as a sober ultra runner.
Yeah.
That's
a big contrast. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference from you looking into your dad's window to them looking at their dad at the finish line. I mean, good grief, man. That, again, Carl, it's time for you to start writing that book, man. Like, I'm telling you, there's so much there, brother. And and I love what you said about just the way you into it. It didn't happen all at once. It took time, and you had some successes and some failures and some successes, but it wasn't instantaneous. And I think sometimes we forget that. It doesn't need to be that way. It happens. It happens when it's supposed to. And if you are leaning in towards allowing that light to illuminate the darkness. It's going to happen for everyone. And so it blows my mind. Real quick, because we're running out of time, I want to talk a little bit about your primal roots, because you now have created this experience for others. I mean, you talk about how you are kind of that social individual who kind of life is bent on bringing things together. Talk about primal roots, because I think it's amazing. I've been watching your guys' posts, and I'm watching these folks climb up that whatever mountain or hill that is on your course. And I'm watching, and I look right at their faces, and they're just like, you can see that shock in their face of like, oh my gosh, I did this. I'm up here now. Like, Carl, I love it, because it reminds me when I first started Addict II Athlete, this light clicking on with people, like, I can do hard things.
Yeah. Well, that was very much a joint project with a man I haven't mentioned yet, called Steve Denby, who, when I knew I needed to get sober, and I went to him about the drink driving, and even before that, he was training me, but I was really being tokenistic. He's a personal trainer with like 30 years experience in the fitness industry. And I've been involved, as I mentioned earlier, in the development of social enterprises in Kent. And I'll cut a very long story short. We decided to put the two worlds together back in 2016, and founded really on Steve's vast experience in the fitness industry and my kind of 10-year experience in the social enterprise world. And just knowing the techniques that he taught me in terms of athletic ability, yes, but more about spirituality and the mindful techniques that you can apply to any aspect of your life that really can only happen in a woodland environment or in a natural environment. So the gym didn't work for me, but the sessions that Steve put me through worked because they were outside. It was about group exercise. It was about a connection to a tribe. It was about accountability. That's the main thing. And I see that's what you guys have got.
Yeah, spot on.
You say you're going to be at that mountain pass at whatever time, then you're going to be there. But if your alarm goes off and it's only you to get out, I won't go today, I'll go tomorrow. But you'll get up and you'll get there. And so we formed Primal Roots in 2016, and we thought, we'd try it. We'd just see whether we could turn this concept, which really, in essence, it's a gym, but nothing's done inside. So people pay for memberships as you would do a normal gym, monthly memberships or blocks of 6 weeks, or sometimes personal training. But we make it free for people who are struggling with addiction, or they've been caught up in the criminal justice system, or a lot of really our priority is people who've experienced homelessness, which is quite often closely connected to addiction. So what's different about us is that we don't separate the community. So there's plenty of organisations that do stuff for homeless people, with homeless people, or with recovering addicts, but I don't know. Obviously, I think you're doing the equivalent over there. Yeah. It's this power in people in a group, belonging to a healthy tribe, where there's no judgment. We don't tell people stories. If they want to tell their story, they can. And there might be 8 people in a session that have paid. There might be 2 that haven't paid. And instead of it being a charity where we're looking for donations, it's more about a social enterprise where we can make money where we can make it, and then reinvest in that social.
Oh my gosh, I love it, man. Carl, again, listeners, you've been well fed today, and I think some of this is I'm sorry, man, but we're gonna have to do some more of this, because there's so many more questions I have for you, and there's so much more I think that we can do. But really, I guess, what do you tell that person, Carl, that's in your same boat, that's just drinking kind of kind of heavily, that has a desire but doesn't know where to grab it? What do you tell that guy or that gal that's like, yeah, but that's him? What do you tell the person that doesn't think it's in their future to be a runner, or to be an athlete, or to be a parent, a mother, or a father? What do you tell them?
I think I mentioned a few times about those taps on the shoulders. I think I missed a few of them. And the one that I missed a lot of them, And I had to be kind of baseball bat on the shoulder before I turned around underneath my dad's window.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say pay attention, because you are being told something. Even the fact that you recognise that you want to change or you need to change. That's just pay attention when that happens, because you will be, and only you will know that moment, and just take notice of it.
Yeah, to be aware. Oh man, brother. Athletes, you've been well fed today. Carl, how do they follow you? Because I know that there's a lot of athletes that are going to want to get to know you, going to want to get to know Primal Roots. How do they find you? What's the best way to connect?
Yeah, I would say Primal Roots on Instagram. That's probably the most active one. Yeah,
that's where I see a lot of your stuff. So I support that absolutely.
Yeah, you'll be able to connect with our group then, and Steve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Him one day as well. He's got a story himself.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'd love to get him on for sure. But athletes, you're hearing this, and the cool thing about what Carl's talking about today is you know what? It doesn't just happen here in good old Utah or good old United States of America. It's in England. It's everywhere. And so it's important for you to share this kind of stuff with people, to open up and to use your experiences and to gain from it, to turn that mess of addiction into a powerful message of sobriety. And that's what we do. So Carl, I want to thank you for hanging out with us. I'm seeing the sun go down gradually, like it's just becoming more profound, and I'm like more intense. And so it's great. But, athletes, reach out to us. I want to thank Radio Ronin, for the Radio Ronin Network, for allowing the podcast to be on the platform. Chunga, Josh, Chandler, and Spencer, you guys are great. Thank you so much for allowing Addict Athlete to be part of the Radio Ronin family. Athletes, go check out their podcast. They're funny. You got some good stuff to run to. But more so, just as the Radio Ronin family, thank you so much for allowing Addict Athlete to be part of that. And listeners, again, check out our website, jump on, support Primal Roots and what Carl and those guys are doing out there across the pond. And until next time, athletes, go turn your mess into a message.